Kinnock.
Before I start, I'd like to pay tribute to the 13 steelworkers who are in the gallery today, along with the outstanding General Secretary of Community Union, Roy Rickus. I'd also like to join with the Secretary of State in paying tribute to Carwyn Jones, who indeed has been doing a fantastic job. And what a contrast to the British government. Within days, Carwyn Jones had put £60 million on the table. So he is somebody that's actually closing the gap.
Order. I said when the Secretary of State was speaking that he should be heard with courtesy. And the same goes... Order! The same goes for the honourable gentleman. It's not appropriate for people to yell shame at an honourable member who is putting a legitimate question. Learn it. Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Welsh Assembly government so rapidly put £60 million on the table. I hope that the UK government will take note. The Secretary of State asked for some focused suggestions and questions. Well, here are three. Firstly, what is the government doing to secure the customer base? Key clients such as Honda, Nissan, Jaguar, Land Rover. I hope that the Secretary of State and colleagues is picking up the phone to those customers and ensuring that we retain the integrity of the order books. Secondly, on the blast furnaces, I'd like to follow up on what my honourable friend, the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, asked. Does the Secretary of State believe that the blast furnaces in Port Talbot should continue as an integral part of the UK steel-making industry? And thirdly, could the Secretary of State explain why the British government continues to block the scrapping of the lesser duty rule? The entire industry and the European Commission repeatedly tells us that by scrapping the lesser duty rule, the anti-dumping measures would have real teeth to deal with the dumping of Chinese steel. Perhaps the reason is that the UK government would rather cosy up to Beijing than stand up for British steelworkers.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, can I say to the honourable gentleman that obviously it's a very difficult situation for his own constituents, and I am working with him and stand ready to work with him in any way that I can to help him and to also to listen to what he's got to say. And the meeting that I've already had with him has been very useful, but I look forward to many more as we jointly try to help with this situation. He asked three questions. One was about the customer base. I think one of the most important things that we are doing, is provide confidence that we can help to find and secure that long-term buy and secure that the long-term interest in the steelworks, because that's what the customer base is going to want to know. We're in touch with many parts of the customer base. I talked earlier about the auto, the aerospace industry, but I think providing that confidence is going to be absolutely key to reassure them that they don't need to look elsewhere. The honourable gentleman asked about the blast furnaces. The blast furnaces, which I went to see myself in action just last week, are hugely important, but I don't think I'm in a position to say exactly what the structure of the business should be going forward. I think that we will work with all parties to make sure that we can secure as many jobs as possible and make sure steelmaking continues. And the honourable gentleman lastly asked about the lesser duty rule. I mean, I will point out to him that it's been long-standing by the previous Labour government and this government that in general the lesser duty rule gets the right balance in terms of the interests of industry and consumers. The last two British trade commissioners that were sent to Brussels, both appointed by Labour, both Labour peers, strongly supported that rule. And as I said earlier, what I'm interested in is what actually works to help the industry, and what we've seen so far is with the tariffs imposed, they actually work, leading to massive reductions in Chinese imports.
Baron Davis.
Speaker, Labour's front-bench interest in steel production is a new phenomenon. In the last Parliament, the current Leader of the Opposition mentioned steel 3 times, but only in relation to Trident. Given the recent grandstanding by certain elements of Welsh Labour, does my right honourable friend agree with me that this contributes absolutely nothing at all, in assisting the many Tartar Port Talbot steelworkers who live in my neighbouring constituency of Gower?
My honourable friend, first of all, I was pleased that we were able to talk in the last few days and discuss the concerns of your constituents. And I agree with what he said, but I would like to also take the opportunity to reassure him that we will work closely with him and other members of this House to bring that confidence to his constituents that we truly are doing everything we can to help.
Mr. Stephen Doughty.
There's a real danger here that the Secretary of State is presenting at sometimes the idea that everything's been done, he's done everything possible in his power. But the fact is the issues facing the industry as a whole. On energy, we still see prices that are 89% higher than European competitors. On procurement, the Ministry of Defence aren't even keeping records of where their steel comes from. And on tariffs, he says he'll do everything, but as we've just heard, he will not take action to scrap the lesser duty rule and to change it. And we're being seen as the ringleader on this in Europe. So what is he going to change in those industry fundamentals that are going to prevent us from seeing crisis after crisis after crisis in the steel industry?
Well, let me just pick up, Mr. Speaker, on one of the issues. He's identified three very important issues that affect the industry, but the honourable gentleman mentions energy costs. Now, one of the reasons that energy costs are higher for energy-intensive industries in Britain, in fact, the key reason is the Climate Change Act. The Climate Change Act that he would have supported, that was introduced by the last Labour government. We, this side of the House did support it, but what we've been working on ever since is trying to mitigate some of the problems that created for industry. I would have thought the honourable gentleman would actually support that.